Welcome to our awareness video on identity theft. Nearly 15 years ago, I was personally hit by this devastating crime, and ever since I've been on a mission to raise awareness to thousands of people across this great country as a certified identity theft risk management specialist. And in this short time together today, I promise you will be enlightened about what identity theft is and probably more informed than anyone you know. And I'll share with you the best solution we found that experts recommend for comprehensive protection. So let's get started. ID theft has already hit over 25% of the U.S. adult population. The FTC estimates over 15 million victims last year alone, which comes out to over 40,000 new victims each day. The FBI estimates a very similar number at over 1,000 cases per hour. We see it on the news nearly every single day. We all know it's a problem to a certain extent, but generally only get bits and pieces and don't get the whole story of what's really going on and the important fact that we're truly on our own to protect ourselves. And that kind of leads us to major misconception number one, that a lot of us think out there at first until we learn about identity theft that we just think logically it would be about our bank account and our credit cards. And so we're kind of getting an unauthorized charge confused with identity theft. And that's actually, I don't even view an unauthorized charge, even real identity theft. A lot of us are with, reputable financial institutions that if we keep an eye on our bank account, our statements, or at least online, and keep an eye on that, usually we don't have any kind of an issue if we contact the fraud department to get that money put back in our account. So that's not the reason to have identity theft protection, or that's not the biggest concern by far. That's really the least of our concern is an unauthorized charge. So what is identity theft? What started as mainly a credit problem 15 years ago, now only 15% of identity theft is even detectable in a credit file anymore, according to the most recent FTC report. So that means 85% of identity theft it has nothing to do with our credit file or score. And so what the black market is really moving into these four other major areas of identity theft, which typically are kind of the silent killers. They normally don't show up in a credit file, yet they're contributing to an average of 600 business hours that a true victim spends trying to prove their innocence and get their records straightened out. And so what are these different types? First of all, driver's license identity theft. Can you imagine getting an envelope in the mail, hand addressed to you from someone that you don't recognize the name? You open it up and there's an ID with all your information but somebody else's picture. You see, this is Christy Mason in Texas, but she received this ID in the mail and this is not her picture. This is the ID thief apparently that was assuming her identity. Now usually you don't get to see the fake IDs made in our name, but apparently the ID thief was careless and must have lost this ID. I'm guessing a good Samaritan picked it up and thought they were mailing it back to the rightful owner. And can you imagine opening up that envelope and seeing all your information but somebody else's picture on that ID? Of course, she didn't know what to do. She turned to social media. She said the ID was found in a different state, which is very common. She said she went to her local police department and, hey, we can't blame law enforcement. They're overwhelmed. Okay, she said that they couldn't help, but they have many more cases typically than they could ever get to in a month's time, and then during that next month, there's all kinds of new cases that are coming in on top of that. They're very difficult to solve as well because they're across jurisdictions and through a computer or underground channels, and so very difficult to catch. Now, those of you that are seniors or getting closer to that age, or you have aging parents, this is unfortunately undermining the golden years of the greatest generation. And identity theft has no age limit. And so this is something we need to be vigilant and aware of and make sure that we are managing that risk from a newborn to an older senior and everyone in between. Now, tax and employment is a multi-dimensional form of identity theft. You may have seen this 15-minute segment aired on 60 Minutes multiple times in recent months talking about the tax ID theft epidemic, the tax refund fraud. It's been sweeping the United States and happening to millions of people in recent years. but that pales in comparison to the complexities that happen when one or more people start working a job somewhere around the country, but not paying the taxes on that income. So it looks like you're underreporting your income under your Social Security number, and there's been people that have had, dozens. Here's an example of 37 other people using their Social Security number to work jobs, and it can affect Social Security benefits. We've heard of instances where state licenses and different things start to get suspended, bank accounts being seized for owing the IRS, and this could be, again, just people that are working menial jobs around the country. There's millions of undocumented workers, as well as many others that have a checkered past that need a clean, valid American Social Security number and identity to live and work a job in this country. And when one or more people start doing that, it is very, very complex. Now, medical identity theft is also fast growing. It's rivaling tax, from what I've seen, as the fastest growing type, and this is also multidimensional. Medicare fraud, which this 14-minute segment done by the 60-minute show, that is just part of it. It's just one piece of that medical identity theft, because it's amazing how much prescriptions and treatment and other things that people can do with just our personal information, even without our health insurance information, right? And so that's where an interesting shift on the black market that they're calling medical identities. Basically, identities that include a Social Security number, sometimes even a copy of a driver's license, are 20 to 50 times more valuable to criminals on the black market than just a financial identity, which they're calling an identity with just a credit or debit card with a 3-digit code, security code, right? That's a financial identity, because if the cardholder or issuer cancels that card, there's really no longer a threat. But if somebody has our Social Security number, we can't cancel that. It doesn't have an expiration date. It can be resold and recycled and reused by multiple people around the country without losing its value. And so that's where the demand is on the black market, and that's why you're seeing hospital systems, doctors' offices, insurance companies, government agencies being targeted for the information that holds those databases that include Social Security numbers and sometimes more. And the fifth and final type is known as character or criminal identity theft, which happens when one or more people start doing something in our name that affects our criminal record or our reputation. This could be something as simple as unpaid parking or traffic tickets in our name we met with somebody recently that actually someone had a DUI using her husband's fake ID and her husband's identity. And they were going out for a Friday night dinner. Her husband was driving. They were pulled over for a routine traffic stop, and they just thought, the officer went back to the patrol car. They thought he would just, come back and give a warning or a basic ticket. Much to their surprise, they started arresting her husband, and he spent an entire weekend in jail. Turned out that somebody had made a fake ID in her husband's name, gotten a DUI, hadn't shown up for court, and so her husband was blindsided by that routine traffic stop and thrown in jail until they could hire attorneys and say, hey, look at the mugshots, this is the wrong person, and very complex form when you get into the character and criminal identity theft as well. And this kind of leads to major misconception number 2, that some people think if I'm careful, if I'm just really smart, if maybe I don't go online, if I shred everything in sight, if I pull my credit report once in a while, keep an eye on my bank accounts, maybe I don't use the computer, I use cash only, all these things to try to outsmart and be careful. And that's actually a major false misconception as well, because there's really 3 main ways our information is getting out, and I think will always get out. Number 1 is human error. Okay, there's government agencies, and I think the people from the IRS, there was dozens of laptops missing or lost. So there's things that happen. Sometimes e-blasts are sent out by different organizations and companies, and they attach the wrong file that include Social Security numbers or people's information. Secondly, paying off insiders. You may have heard of the Blue Cross employee in the state of Michigan that got away with hundreds of thousands of dollars before being caught accessing client information. And the third and the biggest way that we hear in the trend right now is hacking, right? And there's been kind of a big shift in the last couple of years in hacking, where it used to be where these hackers and criminal networks would kind of scroll around randomly looking for weak networks. Now they're staking out a particular database. Kind of like, if you've ever seen the movie Ocean's 11, I saw a data breach article in recent years comparing it to that, where they're staking out a crown jewel database, so to speak, and they're going to find a way to get it, whether it's a hospital system database or a government agency database, whatever it is, they're going to find a way to get access to that. And so there's a big value. The black market is driving this. So no matter how careful we are, these three things are going to happen: human error, paying off insiders, and hacking. And the information is going to get breached one way or another. And it's out of our control what companies and government agencies do with that information and how it's protected and who has access to that information. And so a lot of this, we want to be careful, we want to be smart, but these days in the information age, it's just the reality of the era that we're living in, is that it's really only a matter of time before one or more of the databases that hold our information have some kind of a breach, and our information gets out into the wrong hands. And of course, Anthem is the Blue Cross. That was a game changer. In early 2015, a huge shift in hacking in the black market, because up until that point, it had mainly been credit card breaches. It had been, you may remember a while back, Target and Home Depot and Staples and some of these big credit card breaches, right? Millions of people affected. But the big difference here was in those breaches, first of all, children aren't affected by credit and debit card breaches, right? Because they're not old enough to be a card holder. They're not 18. So that's one difference. And as Anthem Blue Cross, millions of children were affected and opened up their information because they do have a Social Security number when someone is born that is assigned to them in the United States. Secondly, in those credit card breaches, if the issuer or the card holder cancels that number, which a lot of times they get wind that this has been breached, and they just go out and do a mass cancellation of all those cards. And really the threat with those credit card breaches go away with that. But the big difference, again, is when Social Security numbers are included, there's no expiration date. Those can't be canceled, so they can be resold, recycled, and reused, and really can affect us once that gets out for the remainder of our life. Now, the average cost that victims face, logically we would think it would be financial costs would be the biggest risk to manage, right? And we first hear about this, but when you start meeting the victims and you really start researching this, what you hear, first of all, there's consumer laws in place that we shouldn't, again, ever be on the hook or agree to pay anything that's been fraudulently done in our name, right? It's nice to have an advocate, on our side to make sure those are enforced, but we don't hear that as much from the victims. What we really hear is the personal time, the stress, the anguish, the nightmare for months or oftentimes years that a true victim spends trying to prove their innocence and get their records straightened out. And so that's really the biggest risk to manage, is that personal time and the stress and really consuming your life for weeks, months, or years. And so that being said, what do we look for in a protection? According to Michael McCoy and Stephen Schmidt, author of The Silent Crime, as well as John P. Gardner Jr., author of If You Were Me, Then Who Am I?, widely regarded as a couple of the top identity theft experts in the United States today, there are three main components they've been speaking about and writing about for several years. And the first thing is to make sure you have direct access to the right people. Right? For identity theft and fraud, that happens to be licensed fraud investigators is what you want to make sure that you're going to have direct access to. Coupled with that, very important, is to also make sure it includes a limited power of attorney benefit, okay? So that somebody that you trust can legally be contacting those companies or affected agencies on your behalf. So your licensed investigator can actually restore your identity for you in any of the 5 types. If a product that you have it doesn't have that limited power of attorney, then the reality of that is that you're going to have to legally be involved in every single phone call, okay? And so whether that's government agencies, whether that's companies, usually, oftentimes in other states in different time zones. Medical identity theft, it's usually office by office, provider by provider, instance by instance, and ironically, HIPAA laws, tend to get in our own way trying to get access to that. So if we don't want to have to be involved in every single phone call for weeks or months, then we want to make sure that has a limited power of attorney benefit included in that solution. And number three, once number 1 and 2 are in place to manage that risk, okay, of months or years of our time, then it's also nice to have some proactive monitoring, right, for early detection. But what you'll see in the marketplace is that currently, and it has been this way for many years, is that most products are based on number 3. They'll talk about all the different monitoring they're going to do to try to detect any kind of fraud that's happening, but then they kind of gloss over what's going to actually happen when they detect any of the 5 types, or if you find out otherwise, then how is it actually going to be restored, right? Does it have number 1 and 2? Probably not. Most of them gloss over it. They'll even call their customer service reps fancy name, fraud resolution specialists or dedicated caseworkers, but what it comes down to is oftentimes someone just reading a script in a call center. So next, let's go through a handful of services out there and let's see how many of these 3 vital components they actually have to manage that risk. The first couple we'll take a look at are your large property and casualty or homeowners insurance companies. Several years ago, they came out with something called a $25,000 reimbursement policy. They called it identity theft insurance. Usually gave it away for free to the homeowners clients, maybe $50 or $60 a year at the most, and some of you even upped it in recent years to $1 million reimbursement. And even though it was only $25,000, I had to get into the bottom of what that really was, because I knew it couldn't be what it sounded like, what a lot of people might have a false sense of security about, thinking that, well, I guess if up to $25,000 or $1 million gets drained out of my retirement account, maybe this will put that money back in. Couldn't be further from the truth. The only thing this might reimburse for typically are out-of-pocket expenses that you pay out of pocket while you're spending your own time and your own money restoring your identity. So if you're taking time off work, or if you're spending money on affidavits and notarized documents and long-distance phone calls and postage and certified mail and anything like that you're doing, you keep track of all your receipts that you're spending out of pocket. And then months or years later, if you're ever successful restoring your identity, then they typically have you fill out a bunch of forms just trying to get the money back that you just spent out of pocket restoring your own identity. So as you can imagine, not much value, no matter what the face value is, for that. I've never met a victim that said, I wish I had some more reimbursement for my out-of-pocket costs, right? They want somebody to fix what they typically want. The next one is a startup marketing company that you may have seen advertisements for in recent years. You also may have seen in recent months, the FTC actually just sued them for the second time in about 5 years for the largest enforcement action in FTC history that we've seen is $100 million. And so we agree with some of the assessments of that company that there's not a lot of substance in that marketing company's product. It's really monitoring based from what we have seen. We've looked at it very, very closely. And there's a wide variety of other different products, the credit bureaus themselves, financial institutions. Everybody and their brother wants to sell us some type of a monitoring-based product. And the common formula for those is credit monitoring and different credit services, sometimes some internet monitoring or some other types of monitoring, and that's what's really focused on. And then it's usually some type of a customer service, call center that you call for moral support, or and then it usually also includes one of these reimbursement policies, right? Like LifeLock has $1 million. If you read all the fine print, it ends up being basically like a reimbursement policy for your out-of-pocket expenses, all the time and money you're spending out of pocket. So it's really not, restoring your identity for you in managing that risk of the time and the expertise to actually have someone restore it for you. So after almost 15 solid years of immersing ourselves in the identity theft epidemic since this product was created, there's still no other program with real substance on the market today that we found that can do anywhere near for us what the Kroll solution can do to manage that risk and be a real identity theft restoration solution. And they have the solution is called the ID Shield, and as of the time of this assessment, This is by far the best solution that we've found, and it's highly affordable as well.